All right, and just a summary from our presentation. So we talked about occupational therapy, the domain and process, information about what meaningful occupations are, and why occupational deprivation is so harmful to all of us, and especially people who have experienced a more extreme life-changing event, whether it's an illness, an injury, or possibly incarceration. We talked about some of Project Kinship's population that they serve, and also some assessments that as occupational therapists we could use in this setting, or another community setting.
So do you guys have any questions? We are going to pass out a little trippy. So we're going to pass out sort of a little quiz to see what you guys remembered. But before that, if you guys had any questions in advance.
Here we go.
Right.
I have a question.
Yes.
So why, can you elaborate a little more, why do you think, like people who are recently incarcerated, I know you probably touched a little bit, but like maybe more, why people who were incarcerated are in more need for occupational therapy, in your own perspective?
So one of the things that's really difficult, we talked about the occupational deprivation, but what's really hard about it is in prison, there's only very, very specific things that you're allowed to do for your leisure time, as well as for your non-leisure time, your like structured time. And there's very specific things you're allowed to have, so you're not even allowed to have certain types of books or comic books, sometimes drawing implements, and it really depends on where you've been incarcerated. So even if you had things that you really like to do with your family, or maybe you love to play soccer, or whatever you like to do before you end up in jail, a lot of those things, if not all of them, have been taken away. So you do have to find something to do with your time. We are humans, and that is the time when they're in prison, they have a lot of time to do something. And some people find new occupations, and some people don't. Sometimes those occupations, while in prison or in jail, are not something that actually translates to occupations once they get out. So, or that are really sort of unhealthy habits or routines. But even just something as simply as your normal like showering routine is obviously completely disrupted and different than if you were living in your home, than how you have to do it in prison and then going back to your home. Because we're such creatures of habit, even if it was sort of a negative routine or a bad habit that we got into or something we didn't originally like or really want to like, especially if they've been in there for several years or longer, it can be really stressful to come out and not be doing that anymore. I think there's plenty of movies that actually even explore that. But it's really difficult to come back into a world where everyone was doing something that you used to like to do and you haven't been able to participate for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. That was a really good question. And just to add to that, motivation and social skills are like greatly impacted when you're in there. Your motivation decreases, and you kind of, because you feel that you lack certain skills, you don't really want to try anymore. And that's where occupational therapy comes in, to figure out what's meaningful to them so that they can identify goals to work towards, and therefore like increase their motivation and in that increase their social participation.
Which is also why when eventually we'll get a bunch of OTs working in prisons, but it's a very small field right now, especially in the United States. It's a little more common in a couple other countries. That's where we get a lot of our research from, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom. But as far as in the United States, and because also we have a lot of private prisons, and so there's not a lot of OT involvement in the sort of discharge planning, which is something that Elisa talked about in sort of the medical model metaphor. There isn't a lot of OT involvement in a discharge planning, so we can't really prepare everybody that's coming out of prison. So right now, the only place we can help them is in the community, as we try to worm our way into working actually in the prisons to help them while they're there and help them establish healthy occupations. But until then, we can address them once they re-enter the community, so that we can help somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for bringing up that question. Do you have another question over here?
Yeah, my question was if OTs were currently in this setting, but you said you see it elsewhere.
Yeah,
what does
definitely.
it look like in other countries? OT.
So in some countries, in Australia, for example, some of the articles we were reading, it looks like it's part of their normal social services that are available. So as much as they like see a social worker, it looks like it is more involved in their discharge planning. They also seem to have OT groups that come in, or occupational therapists that work with like the activities sort of director of some of the prisons and jails, as well as especially in like the youth offender programs, that comes in to try to provide a leisure activity or provide some sort of occupation group like they do in even like nursing homes. So they'll come in and do like a gardening group or something like that. They'll come in and bring in service dogs, or they'll come in and do something. And that does happen around here, but it's really spotty. And I think even in other countries, they definitely could be more involved in discharge planning.
Yeah, and there are some OTs that have worked in the prison system, even in the United States. It's just more few and far between, and the research isn't there yet. The research in the U.S. isn't published. We do know a few personal accounts of occupational therapists that have worked in the prisons themselves. And I think it's just going to be a few years' time before we have that research in front of us. But thanks for asking that question as well. At this point, we're going to talk about a few of the quiz questions and see if some questions stem out of that. So just kind of see if you guys, what the take-home messages are for today. So the first question is, and blank is an important part of the evaluation as it provides background information on the client's goals, habits, occupations, and history. So of these options, what do you all think would be the answer?
Courtney.
C, occupational profile.
Correct.
Yes,
correct.
Okay. Number 2, what assessment tool addresses 6 concepts allowing the therapist to gain an overview of the client's occupational functioning and uses a mixed data collection method?
B.
B.
That's correct. The MOHOS, the Model of Human Occupational Screening Tool. Good job.
Good job, guys.
So number 3, a client-centered approach is best defined as.
They're kind of long.
Yeah, they're a little bit.
You guys want to say it?
D.
I was gonna say B, yeah.
No, B.
Or is it all of them?
D.
Yes,
D.
that
All
is
of the
correct.
above.
Yes,
Should've read 'em
D.
out.
All the-
Good job, Maria. Trick question.
This is Elisa's section. Occupational deprivation is, guys remember what it is? Do you want me to read it?
Hmm.
Oh, wait,
No,
there's still,
they're long.
there's
I know,
still
it's long.
C?
C.
Yes. Good job.
So the influence of external circumstances that prevent the persons from engaging in desired or necessary occupations over an extended period of time. Occupational deprivation.
And lastly, an example of an instrumental activity of daily living, IADL, is
Driving.
B. Driving.
Driving.
Yeah.
Yes, the other ones are ADL.
good job,
Yes.
guys.
Awesome.
Although
Thanks, Sarah.
technically, I guess you could walk around without being dressed. Not in this society.
Awesome. Well, thanks for engaging in the quiz and
I
giving us
have a
some.
question.
Oh yeah.
About occupational deprivation, could you give some examples of what that would look like?
Definitely. So we'll give some examples like we did about the prison system. So when somebody is in jail for an extended period of time, their environment has changed,
Okay.
the availability of certain activities has changed. For instance, even their sleeping arrangements. So a sleeping routine that somebody normally did at home, if they had their room to themselves and they had a king size bed and they were used to going to bed at 11 p.m. every night and waking up at 10 a.m. We'll say they're in prison, they're now sharing a cell with bars with 2 or more people perhaps, and they're confined to a small bed. their routine, their wake and sleep cycle is going to revolve around the schedule of the prison. It's not going to be their normal routine. So they're going to come home and everything is disrupted. So their normal sleep routine, their occupation of sleep, has just, they're sort of deprived from having a choice of it being the way they want it to be.
And even within like the prison itself, like there are rules, and it's like a different little society, so they have to learn how to adapt to that environment, which is completely different, especially if it's somebody that has never gone to jail. They have to eat what they give them. They don't have the luxury of going into the fridge, getting a soda, eating pizza. They have to learn how to socially interact with other people, maybe of different cultures and ethnicities that maybe they have never been exposed to. So it's a little bit of everything that they have to adapt to.
But people can be occupationally deprived in like lots of different cases. Someone that is physically disabled or has agoraphobia and is afraid to leave their home. A lot of the stuff that they used to participate in, either before they had an episode, or even like the girl in the video was talking about her little simulation where she was having like a flare-up, and so she was needing a wheelchair. Well, she was coming to need a wheelchair so she could get back out in the community because she was so exhausted that she couldn't leave her home, and so she wasn't able to see her friends, she wasn't able to go grocery shopping, she wasn't able to complete any of the stuff that she did for leisure. And so a lot of people that are sort of feeling confined to their home become occupationally deprived. And with children, especially this happens a lot in schools, and that's where we see a lot of behavior. People that live in neighborhoods that don't have a lot of parks, that don't have a lot of extracurricular stuff for them to do, they don't, and the schools sometimes are really not as extracurricular as we would like them to be, and so sorry, they end up sort of, it manifests as more behavioral problems because they just don't have things they're interested in, and they're like, what is the point of me being here? What is the point of doing anything? And to some people, what is the point of being alive? So it's really important.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Great
that
question.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming out today, and if you have any questions for us as time goes on, our contact information is on the brochure that we've passed out, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you.